Animals can be unpredictable, and sometimes they show just how dangerous they can be. In this video, we're going to look at 5 real-life animal attacks that you probably haven't heard of, cases where wild animals struck unexpectedly, leading to shocking consequences. These are true stories that reveal just how deadly an encounter with nature can be. On the morning of October 18, 2024, the surfing world lost an inspiring and adventurous figure, Giulia Manfrini. The 36-year-old Italian surfer and co-founder of A-Wave Travel was surfing in Indonesia's Mentawai Islands when a rare and tragic event took place. Giulia was struck fatally by a swordfish, shocking her loved ones and the entire surfing community. Giulia was born in Venaria Reale, Italy, and was known for her love of adventure. She'd previously been a professional snowboarder and had a deep passion for traveling and surfing. In 2019, she co-founded A-Wave Travel to combine her love of surfing and travel, offering unique experiences for surfers and snowboarders. Through her company, she helped others pursue their own adventurous dreams. On that day, Giulia was surfing near Masukut Island, a popular spot in the Mentawai Islands known for its powerful waves and beautiful scenery. This place was one of Giulia's favorites, and she had surfed there many times, connecting deeply with the area's natural beauty. As she waded in the water around 9:30 a.m., everything seemed like a normal day. However, without warning, a swordfish leapt from the water, striking Giulia directly in the chest with its sharp bill. Swordfish rarely harm humans, but this tragic accident occurred suddenly, catching everyone by surprise. A nearby surfer, Alexandra Riba, heard Giulia's scream before she fell from her board. He, along with another friend, Massimo Ferro, quickly paddled to her side. They pulled Giulia from the water and tried to provide first aid as they rushed her to the closest clinic, Pepe Pasakiat Tailalo Health Center. Sadly, her injuries were too severe, and despite the medical team's quick efforts, Giulia passed away shortly after arriving at the clinic. Along with her chest wound, signs of drowning contributed to her untimely passing. News of her death spread quickly, touching not only her local community but also her thousands of followers on social media. Giulia had been active on Instagram, regularly sharing her surfing and travel adventures with fans around the world. Just days before the incident, she had shared a post saying she'd be out of office for a couple of weeks, a message that would become her final goodbye. Her passing left a deep void in her hometown of Venaria Reale, where the mayor, Fabio Giulivi, expressed the community's sadness. Giulia was admired for her enthusiasm and her commitment to following her dreams. She had built a life that allowed her to travel, surf, and inspire others along the way, turning her passions into a career that connected her with people worldwide. Heartfelt tributes poured in from friends and colleagues. James Colston, her business partner at A-Wave Travel, shared that Giulia was the lifeblood of their company and that her enthusiasm and love for surfing and life would be greatly missed. Colston noted that while her friends and medical responders did everything they could, her passing was a freak accident that left an impact on everyone who knew her. Other surfers who had known Giulia personally remembered her for her lively and caring spirit. Frankie Smithhurst, from a local surf charter company, described her as someone who embraced every moment with passion. Her friends and fellow surfers reflected on her kindness and her commitment to helping others, qualities that had left a mark on many lives. The tragic details of Giulia's accident were later confirmed by Lamudin Sirigar, the acting head of the Mentawai Islands Disaster Management Agency. He confirmed that the swordfish unexpectedly jumped toward Manfrini and pierced her chest, a highly unusual event. Incidents involving swordfish are extremely rare, making this accident even more shocking. A 2007 article from the Asian Journal of Surgery noted only one recorded swordfish-related fatality at that time, showing just how unique and devastating this event was. Giulia's body was eventually transported to Padang City before being sent home to Italy, leaving her family, friends, and fans to mourn the loss of a person who seemed filled with boundless energy and optimism. Her tragic accident was a painful reminder of the unpredictable dangers that can arise, even in the most peaceful settings. On February 24, 2010, a routine Dean with Shamu show at SeaWorld Orlando turned into a tragedy. Dawn Branchot, a senior trainer known for her dedication to marine animals, was working with Tilikum, one of the largest orcas in captivity. Dawn had trained Tilikum many times and had built a connection with him. However, on that day, things took a dark turn. After the show, Dawn lay beside Tilikum in shallow water, petting him as usual, when the orca suddenly grabbed her and pulled her underwater. Spectators at first thought this was part of the act, but it quickly became clear it wasn't. Dawn was forcefully dragged around underwater, and efforts by staff to distract Tilikum failed. By the time they retrieved her, Dawn had sustained severe injuries and was pronounced dead shortly afterward. People began to question why this happened. Why would a trained orca, familiar with humans, act this way? The answers lie in Tilikum's complex past and the stressful conditions of his captivity. Tilikum's journey began off Iceland's coast, where he was captured in 1983 at only 2 years old. Separated from his family, he was moved to Sealand of the Pacific, a small Canadian marine park. Here, Tilikum lived in a cramped tank with 2 older female orcas who frequently bullied him. Trainers often withheld food as a form of training, adding to his stress. His time at Sealand was challenging. The conditions forced the orcas to perform multiple shows daily, leaving little rest. This constant pressure, combined with limited space, impacted Tilikum's mental well-being. In 1991, a tragic incident occurred when Kelty Byrne, a trainer at Sealand, fell into the orca pool. Tilikum and the 2 female orcas pulled her underwater, leading to her drowning. Afterward, Sealand closed and Tilikum was sold to SeaWorld. At SeaWorld in 1992, Tilikum was placed into their breeding program and fathered 17 calves. Despite his role, he spent much of his time alone. Unlike wild orcas who thrive in family groups, Tilikum often lacked social contact, which likely affected his mental state. Experts believe that captivity and isolation influenced Tilikum's behavior. Marine biologist Nancy Blake noted that wild orcas rely on strong family bonds, which play a critical role in their well-being. Orcas like Tilikum, deprived of these social structures, may experience high levels of stress. His use in breeding further intensified this stress, as it lacked the natural interactions seen in wild orca mating behavior. Some believe this frustration may have contributed to his actions toward trainers. On the day of Dawn's passing, witnesses saw her working closely with Tilikum, as she often did. But as she lay beside him, he suddenly pulled her into the water. Trainers tried to use several methods to get him to release her, but Tilikum wouldn't let go. When they finally retrieved Dawn, she had suffered critical injuries. In response to this tragedy, SeaWorld attempted to shift focus, suggesting Dawn's ponytail might have triggered Tilikum's reaction, as he could have mistaken it for a toy. Yet many experts and former trainers disagreed, arguing that Tilikum's actions were intentional and that he was likely aware of what he was doing. Dawn Brancheau's death wasn't the first fatal incident involving Tilikum. Besides Kelty Byrne, another death occurred in 1999 when Daniel Dukes, a man who trespassed into SeaWorld after hours, was later found deceased in Tilikum's tank. Although the exact events remain unclear, it's believed Tilikum played a role. Tilikum wasn't the only orca at SeaWorld with a history of aggression. In 2004, another orca named Kai attacked a trainer in SeaWorld San Antonio, though the trainer escaped unharmed. Incidents like this reveal the potential risks associated with keeping large, intelligent animals like orcas in captivity. After Dawn's death, SeaWorld faced heavy scrutiny from the public and safety agencies. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, conducted an investigation, revealing multiple safety issues and finding that SeaWorld hadn't adequately protected trainers from known risks. The investigation led to a fine of $75,000. As a result, SeaWorld implemented significant changes. Trainers were no longer allowed to enter the water with orcas, and protective barriers were installed. Despite these changes, critics argue that the core issue remains: keeping intelligent social animals in artificial environments that limit their natural behaviors. It was August 25, 2010, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A small regional filair flight operated by a Czech-made Let L410 Turbolet was en route from the capital, Kinshasa, to Bandundu, a quieter city around 400 kilometers away. On board were 21 people, including 3 crew members. The flight was commanded by Danny Philemot, the Belgian owner of Filair and an experienced pilot, alongside Chris Wilson, a British first officer who had recently joined the airline. The two were familiar with each other's skills, having flown together before, and expected a smooth journey. The flight proceeded uneventfully, making brief stops in a few smaller towns along the way. However, as they approached Bandundu's small airport, the plane performed a go-around after an aborted landing attempt, a standard maneuver that pilots use when visibility or stability issues arise. But as they circled back for a second approach, something went terribly wrong. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing the plane drop from the sky like a leaf, crashing into a small mud and brick house just over a mile from the runway. Tragically, 20 people, including all 3 crew members, lost their lives, with one woman surviving in critical condition. Initial theories suggested that the plane may have run out of fuel, as it had already attempted one landing. Yet investigators soon ruled this out after finding 150 liters of fuel in the wreckage, enough to complete the journey. Without a detailed investigation, largely due to limited resources in the region, the exact cause remained a mystery. While the black boxes were recovered, no information from them was ever publicly released. Despite attempts by the British Air Accidents Investigation Branch, or AAIB, to access the data, the inquiry went silent. Then, 2 months after the crash, a sensational story surfaced in a Congolese tabloid. According to the sole survivor, the crash wasn't caused by technical failure, but rather by a live crocodile that had somehow been smuggled onto the plane. The survivor claimed a passenger hid the crocodile in a duffel bag, and as the plane descended, it escaped, causing panic among the passengers. They rushed to the front of the aircraft, triggering a dangerous shift in weight. The sudden imbalance led to the loss of control, causing the plane to crash. The story quickly gained media attention worldwide, though it seemed almost too bizarre to believe. Some reports added that the crocodile had been smuggled with the intent to sell it, and that it had even survived the crash, only to be killed by rescuers. However, no evidence, such as remains or footprints, was found to confirm the presence of a crocodile, and no video of it was located despite rumors of such footage online. Doubts over the crocodile theory emerged, as the survivor had initially reported that the passengers panicked because the plane was landing on a reserve strip rather than the main runway. It's unclear why her account later shifted to the crocodile story, or why no other witness or investigator noted any trace of an animal at the site. Still, the crocodile explanation resurfaced 4 years later, during an inquest into the death of Chris Wilson, the British first officer. Wilson's father mentioned hearing the crocodile story from Congolese officials and speculated that the animal's escape could have caused a weight shift that destabilized the plane. Physically, this theory is plausible. A sudden movement toward the front of a small plane could indeed alter its balance and control. Yet aviation experts note that there's no record of any other crash caused by passengers shifting due to panic. Alternative explanations exist as well. Some speculated that a rival airline might have tampered with the plane due to competition in the region's unregulated aviation market, but no evidence supports this. A more likely scenario is that the plane stalled during the landing approach, which is common with small aircraft when speed drops too low, causing a loss of lift and sudden descent. Due to the lack of information from the black boxes and limited regulatory follow-up, the true cause remains unknown. While the crocodile theory endures in popular accounts, it may not align with reality. The crash of Philair, let L410 Turbole, remains shrouded in mystery, leaving unanswered questions and fueling various theories. It was July 25, 2023, in the small town of Silsbee, Texas, close to the Louisiana border. Peggy Jones, a 64-year-old woman, was mowing the lawn of an investment property that had been in her family for years. On this hot summer day, Peggy was on a tractor mower, far from any trees, working her way through the yard. It was an ordinary day, until it turned into something unimaginable. Out of nowhere, something heavy fell onto her arm. Looking down, Peggy realized it was a snake, about 4.5 feet long. She guessed it had fallen from the sky, likely dropped by a bird of prey. Almost instantly, the snake coiled tightly around her arm and began striking at her face. Shocked and frightened, Peggy struggled to fling the snake off, but it held on tightly, repeatedly hitting her face, even striking her glasses. Things went from bad to worse. Before Peggy could shake the snake off, a hawk, probably the same bird that had dropped it, swooped down, aiming to reclaim its prey. The hawk made multiple dives, attacking Peggy as it tried to snatch the snake back. Each time the bird struck, its talons dug into Peggy's arm, cutting her skin. The force of its attempts to pull the snake away tugged Peggy's arm upward, leaving her nearly powerless in a tug-of-war between the snake wrapped around her arm and the hawk clawing at it. Her husband, Wendell, was mowing the front yard, completely unaware of her distress. With the noise of his own tractor and the sounds from a nearby highway, he couldn't hear Peggy's calls for help. Peggy was left to fight off both animals alone. The hawk's talons cut deeper into her arm, and the snake tightened its grip, causing bruises to form under her skin. The snake struck at her face repeatedly, hitting her glasses each time. Peggy later described the ordeal as something out of a nightmare. She had seen hawks hunt snakes in the wild before, but she never expected to be caught in such a terrifying struggle herself. After what felt like an eternity, the hawk finally managed to grab the snake and flew away, leaving Peggy in shock, her right arm covered in cuts, bruises, and punctures from the snake and hawk. Blood soaked through her clothes, and her glasses were damaged from the snake's attacks. Still in a state of disbelief and pain, Peggy continued screaming until Wendell finally heard her. He rushed over to find his wife shaken and injured. Without fully understanding what had happened, He helped Peggy to their truck and drove her to the nearest hospital. On the way there, Wendell began to grasp the horror of what she'd just endured. At the hospital, doctors cleaned and bandaged Peggy's wounds. Her arm was covered in puncture marks from the hawk's claws and bruises from the snake's grip. Although the snake had struck at her face multiple times, Peggy was fortunate. She hadn't been bitten, so there was no risk of venom poisoning. However, her recovery wasn't without risks. Peggy had recently undergone double knee replacement surgery, so doctors cautioned her that any infection in her open wounds could be dangerous. She was given antibiotics and strict instructions to monitor her injuries closely. Back home, Peggy faced a difficult recovery both physically and mentally. She had nightmares about the attack, reliving the terror each night. Her arm, heavily bandaged for weeks, was a constant reminder of the event, and her family, Wendell, their children and grandchildren, had to help her with daily tasks. Simple chores like cooking or cleaning were too difficult for her to manage alone. The attack left a lasting impression on Peggy. She reflected on how quickly life can change, even during an ordinary day. Known for her resilience, Peggy was shaken in ways she hadn't expected, facing new fears and anxieties. In the weeks following, she and Wendell took every precaution to prevent infection, which remained a significant concern due to her recent knee surgery. They had planned to visit a casino after finishing their yard work that day, but now all unnecessary outings were postponed until Peggy had fully healed. On a quiet April 12, 2019 morning in Alachua County, Florida, 75-year-old Marvin Hajos made a distressed 911 call from his rural property, asking for an ambulance. His frail, trembling voice conveyed urgency. Marvin, who kept several exotic animals on his property, was surrounded by a unique but dangerous creature, the cassowary, a large flightless bird known for its aggression. Cassowaries, native to New Guinea and parts of Australia, are often described as prehistoric due to their powerful build and imposing presence. These birds can stand over 6 feet tall, weigh more than 120 pounds, and have strong legs equipped with sharp claws, capable of delivering devastating injuries. They are notorious for their ability to attack perceived threats with swift kicks. Marvin had spent years breeding and caring for cassowaries, despite the known risks. Around 10 a.m., Marvin was tending to the cassowary's enclosure when he reportedly tripped and fell. This accidental fall brought him dangerously close to the bird, which reacted with aggression. It attacked Marvin, inflicting severe wounds with its claws. Paramedics arrived quickly and transported him to UF Health Shands Hospital in Gainesville, but his injuries were too extensive and Marvin passed away shortly after. Cassowaries are often sought after by exotic animal collectors despite their dangerous nature. They are agile, capable of running up to 31 miles per hour, and can jump nearly 7 feet in the air. Known as one of the world's most dangerous birds, a cassowary's claw can measure up to 4 inches, allowing it to severely injure with a single strike. Even though the bird is flightless, it remains a formidable presence with strong defensive instincts. Initial findings by Alachua County officials suggested this was an unfortunate accident. It appears the man fell, and the cassowary attacked him after the fall, stated Deputy Chief Jeff Taylor. The Sheriff's Office and Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission began an investigation. Meanwhile, the bird was safely contained on Marvin's property, though many wondered how such a tragedy could occur. Marvin had been fascinated by exotic animals for decades, developing a deep interest in handling species that required specialized care. Florida classifies cassowaries as Class II wildlife, indicating they pose significant risk to humans. Owning one requires prior experience and specific caging standards, but breeding permits are not strictly enforced, allowing hobbyists like Marvin to keep such animals without stringent oversight. The autopsy report painted a grim picture of the injuries Marvin sustained. He suffered multiple puncture wounds and deep cuts from the cassowary's claws across his body, including his face, neck, abdomen, thighs, and legs. A particularly serious wound to his brachial artery resulted in significant blood loss, ultimately leading to his death. Marvin's health records indicated prior heart issues and a recent infection, but the report clarified that his death was directly caused by injuries from the cassowary's attack. The 911 call recording reveals Marvin trying to communicate his address to the dispatcher, who assured him help was on the way, but time was not on his side. When paramedics reached him, Marvin was unresponsive and barely breathing. Though they managed to briefly revive his pulse, he passed away soon after reaching the hospital. Following the incident, the cassowary remained on Marvin's property briefly before being sold at a Gulf Coast livestock auction. This sale reignited debates on the safety of keeping such dangerous animals without stricter regulations. Despite the tragic event, The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has not introduced new laws regarding cassowary ownership. According to spokesperson Karen Parker, breeding animals for commercial purposes categorizes them as domestic, exempting them from certain permit requirements. Marvin's friends and neighbors were shaken by the loss. Many recalled his passion for exotic animals and his willingness to share stories of his experiences. His fiancée, who lived with him on the property, chose not to share further details, simply noting that Marvin died doing what he loved. Cassowary attacks are rare but not unheard of. These birds have a history of reacting aggressively to perceived threats, though they are more often raised as hobby animals rather than for commercial purposes in the U.S. Known for their exotic allure, cassowaries demand significant caution due to their unpredictable nature and lethal claws.